You are watching a man's career, reputation, and life fall apart in real time. You just do not know whose yet. Officer Bryce Kane made a decision every cop fears. He chose the wrong target. He saw a black man in a luxury SUV and assumed he was a criminal. He had no idea he was staring at one of the FBI's most decorated agents, Special Agent Elias Crow. What happens next is not just a misunderstanding, it is a brutal collision of ego and justice that ends with a twist so shocking it brought an entire police department to its knees. Watch closely. The hunter is about to become the hunted. The engine of the black Chevy Tahoe ticked softly as it cooled, the only sound in the otherwise silent cul-de-sac of Oak Creek Sycamore Drive. It was an affluent neighborhood of manicured lawns cut with geometric precision, American flags drooping lazily on porch poles, and the kind of silence that cost $500,000 to buy. Inside the Tahoe, Elias Crow sat with the stillness of a predator waiting for the wind to change. He adjusted the cuffs of his Italian wool suit jacket, tailored to hide the Sig Sauer P226 holstered under his left arm. On the passenger seat lay a folder stamped confidential, a lukewarm cup of coffee, and a pair of high-powered binoculars. Elias, known as Eli to the very few friends he kept outside the bureau, checked his watch. He was not here for a drug bust or a bank robbery. He was here for something much harder to prove: white-collar corruption involving city zoning permits, organized crime, and money laundering. The target was a man named Randall Pierce, a city councilman living 3 doors down. Elias was a veteran agent with years in the FBI, moving from the chaotic gang task forces of Chicago to the surgically precise white-collar crimes division. He knew how to wait. Patience was the primary weapon of his trade. He took a sip of the coffee, grimacing at the temperature, and scanned the street. A delivery truck rumbled past. A woman walked a golden retriever, normal, boring, perfect. Then the rearview mirror caught a flash of white and blue. A police cruiser, Unit 402 of the Oak Creek Police Department, turned slowly onto the street. It did not pass, it crawled. The shark-like nose of the Ford Explorer dipped as the brakes engaged, coming to a halt 2 car lengths behind Elias's Tahoe. Elias let out a long, weary sigh through his nose. He knew the drill. He was a black man sitting in a tinted SUV in a neighborhood where the demographics skewed overwhelmingly white. He had hoped the generic government plates would be enough of a do not disturb sign, but apparently today was going to be complicated. He watched the mirrors. The cruiser's doors opened. 2 officers. The driver was a wall of a man, Officer Bryce Kane. Elias did not know his name yet, but he knew the type. Kane walked with his chest puffed out, thumbs hooked near his belt, his sunglasses reflecting the suburban glare. He was heavy-set but muscular, with a thick mustache that looked like it belonged in another era. His body language screamed territorial aggression. The passenger was younger, Officer Celine Porter. She looked barely out of the academy, her uniform slightly too big, her hand resting nervously near her radio. She trailed Kane by a few steps, glancing around the street as if expecting an ambush. "Here we go," Elias whispered to himself. He kept his hands visible, resting them at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel. He lowered the driver's side window as Kane approached. Kane did not say hello. He did not ask how Elias was doing. He leaned down, placing a meaty hand on the roof of the Tahoe, and peered inside through his aviators. "License and registration," Kane barked. No preamble. Elias turned his head slowly. He kept his voice calm, the practiced baritone of a man who had negotiated with hostage takers. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" "I said license and registration," Kane repeated, louder this time. He leaned in further, sniffing the air inside the car like a bloodhound. "You don't live here." "I'm working," Elias said calmly. "I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. I'm going to reach for them now." This was the protocol: declare, describe, move. "Don't you move a muscle." Kane's hand dropped to his holster. The snap of the retention strap being thumbed off echoed in the quiet street. "I didn't ask for a life story. I asked for ID. Get out of the car." Elias frowned. This was escalating faster than usual. "Officer, I am identifying myself as a special agent with the FBI. I am on an active surveillance operation. If I get out of the car, I break cover." "Break cover?" Kane laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You're sitting in a suspicious vehicle in a high-priority neighborhood idling. We've had reports of break-ins. You fit the description." Elias knew for a fact there had been no break-ins in this zip code for months. He checked the crime stats daily. "Which description is that, officer? The one that says black male in a car?" Kane's face reddened instantly. The vein in his neck bulged. He ripped the door handle. It was locked. "Open this door or I break the window," Kane shouted. Officer Porter stepped forward tentatively. "Bryce, maybe let him show the ID first. He said he's a Fed." "Shut up, Porter," Kane snapped without looking at her. "He's stalling. He's probably ditching dope or a piece right now. Open the door." Elias calculated his options. If he refused, Kane would smash the window, drag him out, and the scene would be even bigger. If he complied, he lost control of the situation. But he saved the taxpayer the cost of a window and potentially saved his own life if Kane was as trigger-happy as he looked. "Okay," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming cold and hard. I am unlocking the door. I am stepping out, but you need to listen very carefully to what I tell you next. Get out. Elias unlocked the door. Before he could even swing it fully open, Kane grabbed him by the lapel of his expensive suit and yanked. Elias stumbled as he was hauled onto the asphalt. He was 6'2" and in peak physical condition, a former college linebacker, but he allowed himself to be moved. Resistance now would give Kane the excuse he was desperately fishing for. Hands on the hood now. Kane slammed Elias against the hot metal of the Tahoe. The impact rattled his teeth, but he did not grunt. He spread his legs and placed his hands on the roof, fingers spread. My badge, Elias said clearly, speaking loud enough for the body cam on Kane's chest to pick it up perfectly, is in my left interior pocket. My service weapon is holstered under my left arm. Do not reach for it unless you want a federal inquiry on your desk by morning. Gun! Kane shouted, ignoring the context. He's got a gun. Porter, cover me. Porter drew her weapon but pointed it low, looking terrified. Bryce, he told you he has it. He's complying. He's armed and dangerous. Kane jammed his knee into the back of Elias's knee, forcing him to buckle. Elias went down to one knee, grip biting into his suit trousers. Kane grabbed Elias's right wrist and twisted it behind his back, forcing it up near his shoulder blades. The pain was sharp, rotator cuff tearing sharp. Elias gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing. Officer Kane, Elias said, reading the nameplate now that it was inches from his face, you are making a mistake that you cannot fix. Check my pocket. Look at the credentials. I'm checking for my safety first. Kane patted Elias down aggressively. He found the gun. He ripped the Sig Sauer from the holster and skidded it across the pavement, scratching the finish of a government-issued firearm. That is federal property, Elias stated. His voice was becoming robotic, detached. He was memorizing every second. Excessive force, failure to verify credentials, unlawful detention. Kane finally reached into the jacket pocket. He pulled out the leather wallet. He flipped it open. The gold shield of the FBI gleamed in the sunlight. The photo ID next to it clearly read, Darius Blake, Special Agent. Kane stared at it. For a second, just one heartbeat, the silence returned. Porter leaned in. Seeing the badge, her eyes went wide. Bryce, she whispered, that's real. That's a real badge. Let him up. But Kane's ego was a runaway train. He had already committed. He had shouted. He had used force. And neighbors were starting to come out onto their porches. Mrs. Kensington from number 42 was holding her iPhone up. A landscaping crew across the street had stopped their mowers and were watching. If Kane backed down now, he looked like a fool. If he doubled down, he could claim the badge looked fake. He could claim Elias was resisting. In Kane's mind, the truth was malleable. Kane snapped the wallet shut and shoved it into his own pocket. Fake, Kane announced loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Looks like a forgery to me. You get these online? Elias's blood ran cold. This was not just incompetence anymore. This was malice. You know that is legitimate. Call your supervisor. Call the field office. The number is on the back of the card. I'm taking you in for impersonating a police officer, resisting arrest, and possession of an illegal firearm, Kane said, pulling his handcuffs. Click, click, the steel bit into Elias's wrist. You are under arrest, Kane sneered, leaning close to Elias's ear. You think a suit and a fake badge make you untouchable? Not in my town, boy. The racial undertone was not subtle. It was a sledgehammer. Elias stood up as Kane hauled him by the chain of the cuffs. He turned to face the officer. Elias did not look defeated. He looked like a judge passing a sentence. Officer Porter, Elias said, locking eyes with the rookie, you are witnessing a felony. Deprivation of rights under color of law, Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. If you do not intervene, you are an accessory. Porter flinched. She looked at Kane. Bryce, we should run the badge number. Dispatch can verify it in seconds. I said get him in the car. Kane shoved Elias toward the cruiser. Elias did not fight. He walked with dignity, despite his hands being bound behind him. He sat in the back of the cramped plastic seat of the police interceptor. The smell of stale vomit and disinfectant filled his nose. Kane slammed the door. Inside the car, trapped behind the cage, Elias took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. He was not praying, he was counting. He knew something the officer did not. Elias was not just on a stakeout, he was part of a coordinated takedown. His partner, Special Agent Theo Reed, was 2 streets over in a surveillance van, and Elias was wearing a wire. Everything that had just happened, the racial slur, the dismissal of the badge, the refusal to check credentials had been recorded and transmitted live to the Chicago field office. Elias looked at the digital clock on the dashboard of the cruiser. Theo Quentin, Elias whispered, knowing the microphone taped to his chest beneath his shirt would pick it up. Come get me and bring the cavalry. Outside, Kane was strutting. He was playing to the audience. He walked over to Mrs. Kensington, who was still filming. Nothing to see here, folks. Just taking some trash off the street, Kane boomed. He picked up Elias's gun from the pavement, handling it carelessly by the trigger guard, a massive safety violation, and tossed it onto the passenger seat of his cruiser. He turned to Porter. You drive. I'll write up the booking sheet on the way. We're going to charge him with everything we can think of. Disorderly conduct, assault on an officer. He didn't touch you, Bryce, Porter said, her voice trembling. He thought about it, Kane grunted. Get in. They got into the car. Kane turned around, grinning at Elias through the cage. Comfortable back there? Don't worry. The county lockup is worse. Elias looked at him, his face completely expressionless. You have about 3 minutes left, officer. 3 minutes until what? Kane laughed. Until your life ends, Elias said softly. Not your heartbeat, but your life as you know it. Kane rolled his eyes. Yeah, tell it to the judge. He slapped the dashboard. Let's go, Porter. Porter put the car in drive. She released the brake, but before she could touch the gas, a siren chirped. Not the wail of a distant ambulance, the sharp, aggressive whoop-whoop of a federal siren. A massive black SUV, identical to Elias's, but with grille lights flashing red and blue, squealed around the corner, blocking the street in front of them. Then another came from behind, boxing them in. Then a third. Tires screeched. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear with FBI emblazoned in bright yellow on their backs poured out. They did not look like local cops. They moved with the terrifying speed of a SWAT team. Kane froze. His hand went to his door handle, but he did not open it. What is this? He stammered. Who are these guys? Elias leaned forward against the cage. A small, cold smile finally touched his lips. That, Elias said, is the twist. The silence of Sycamore Drive, previously disturbed only by the chirping of birds and the drone of lawnmowers, was now annihilated by a cacophony of shouting, slamming doors, and the crackle of high-frequency radios. Officer Bryce Kane sat frozen in the driver's seat of his cruiser. His brain, usually quick to categorize the world into threat or civilian, was misfiring. The visual data in front of him did not make sense. Police officers were the predators in this ecosystem, not the prey. Yet 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans had just executed a hard box maneuver on his vehicle, a tactic usually reserved for terrorists or cartel leaders. Bryce! Officer Celine Porter's voice was high, bordering on hysterical. Bryce, put the car in park. Put your hands up. Shut up, Kane hissed, though his voice lacked its usual venom. It was thin, greedy. It's a mistake or a prank, probably a movie shoot. They didn't have permits for this. He was clinging to delusion like a life raft. Driver of the police cruiser, a voice boomed over a PA system from the lead SUV. It was not a request, it was the voice of authority. Turn off the engine, throw the keys out the window, keep your hands visible. Inside the cage of the cruiser, Elias Crow watched the back of Kane's neck. He saw the sweat beginning to beat at the hairline. I'd listen to them, Bryce, Elias said calmly. That's Special Agent Theo Reed on the horn. He has a very low tolerance for nonsense. Kane whipped his head around, his face purple. You set me up! You set this up yourself, Elias replied. I tried to show you my ID. You chose not to look. Driver now. The PA system boomed again. Kane's hands shook as he reached for the ignition. He turned the key. The engine died. He dropped the keys out of the window. They clattered onto the asphalt. Exit the vehicle. Walk backwards toward the sound of my voice. Hands on your head. Kane opened the door. The heat of the afternoon hit him, but he felt cold. He stepped out. He looked to his left and right. There were at least a dozen agents. They wore heavy plate carriers over navy blue fatigues. They held M4 carbines at the low ready, barrels pointed at the ground, but ready to snap up in a millisecond. These were not beat cops. These were the FBI's regional SWAT team, the heavy hitters called in for high-risk warrants. Kane interlaced his fingers behind his head. He started walking backward. Officer Kane, a voice spoke from behind him, not over a PA this time, but close. Stop. Get on your knees. I'm a police officer, Kane shouted, finding a scrap of his old bravado. You can't do this. I have a badge. Get on your knees or you will be put on your knees. Kane crumbled. He sank to the asphalt, the gravel biting into his uniform pants. 2 agents moved in. They did not treat him with the professional courtesy usually extended between law enforcement agencies. They treated him like a hostile combatant. One agent grabbed Kane's left wrist, the other his right. They wrenched his arms down and slapped a pair of flex cuffs, heavy-duty plastic zip ties, onto his wrists. Hey, that's too tight, Kane yelped. Quiet, the agent on his right growled. Meanwhile, a different team moved to the passenger side. Officer Porter was already out of the car crying, her hands high in the air. I didn't do anything, she sobbed. I told him to check the badge. Secure her, a tall agent commanded. Check her weapon, is it clear? Clear, another agent shouted, removing Porter's sidearm. They did not cuff her, but they escorted her away from Kane, separating the witnesses. Then the focus shifted to the backseat of the cruiser. The tall agent, Theo Reed, approached the rear door. He had red hair that was graying at the temples and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He did not look happy. He looked apocalyptic. He opened the rear door. You okay, Eli? Reed asked, his voice instantly shifting from command shout to a concerned friend. Elias shifted in the plastic seat, offering his back to the door so Reed could reach the handcuffs. Shoulders a bit tight, he wrenched it pretty good, but I'm fine. Key, Reed barked over his shoulder. An agent handed him a universal handcuff key. Reed unlocked the cuffs. Elias stepped out of the cruiser. He rubbed his wrists where red welts were already forming. He adjusted his suit jacket, brushed a speck of dust off his lapel, and took a deep breath of fresh air. He walked over to where Kane was kneeling. The scene was a tableau of humiliation. Kane, the king of his little patrol beat, was now kneeling before the man he had called boy minutes ago. Elias looked down at him. He did not gloat. He did not smile. He just looked disappointed. Officer Kane, Elias said, I am Special Agent Elias Crow. I am the lead investigator on the RICO case targeting the corrupt zoning operations in this district. You have just compromised a federal investigation. Kane looked up, blinking against the sun. RICO? What are you talking about? You were just sitting there. I was waiting for a courier to deliver a package of cash to Councilman Pierce, Elias said, pointing to the house 3 doors down. A courier who just drove past us while you were screaming about my registration. Kane's face went pale. I didn't know. Ignorance is not a shield for incompetence, Elias said, and it certainly is not a shield for civil rights violations. A black sedan pulled up to the perimeter. The door opened and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out. He moved with the weight of authority that made even the SWAT team straighten up. That's the ASAC, Reed whispered to Elias. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Victor Lang, he was listening to the wire. ASIC Lang walked straight past the SWAT team, past Porter, and stopped in front of Kane. Lang was a small man with glasses, but his eyes were like lasers. Get him up, Lang ordered the agents. They hauled Kane to his feet. Lang leaned in close. Officer, in my 25 years with the Bureau, I have heard many things on a wire, but what I heard you say to Agent Crow today, that was special. That was a career-ending performance. He resisted, Kane sputtered, trying to lie one more time. He refused to exit. Lang reached into his pocket and pulled out a digital recorder. He pressed a button. Kane's voice, you don't live here. You fit the description. Open this door or I break the window. Elias's voice, I am a federal agent. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. Kane's voice, I didn't ask for a life story. Get out. Lang stopped the recording. He identified himself immediately. You escalated immediately. And then Lang pressed the button again. Kane's voice, not in my town, boy. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. The neighbors were all watching now. Mrs. Kensington was still filming. The landscaping crew had moved closer. Kane realized, with a sinking feeling in his gut, that the audio was not just on Lang's recorder. It was likely on Elias's body wire, his own body camera, if he had not conveniently forgotten to turn it on, which he had this time, and potentially recorded by the neighbors. You are going to be processed, Lang said coldly, but not by your department. We are taking custody of you under federal statute. You can't arrest a cop for doing his job, Kane screamed, struggling against the flex cuffs. I have qualified immunity. Elias stepped forward. Qualified immunity protects officials who make reasonable mistakes in the line of duty. It does not protect those who knowingly violate constitutional rights. You saw the badge. You called it fake without verification. That is malice, Bryce. That pierces the veil of immunity. Officer Porter, Lang called out. Porter jumped. Yes, sir. You suggested running the badge, Lang said. We heard that on the wire. You tried to de-escalate. I tried. He wouldn't listen, Porter stammered. That fact is the only reason you are not in cuffs right now, Lang said. But you are going to write a statement, a very long, very detailed statement, and if you leave out a single comma, you will go down with him. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Kane looked at his partner. Celine, don't tell them anything. Union rep, call the union rep. Porter looked at Kane. She looked at the FBI agents. She looked at Elias, the man she had almost watched get beaten. Shut up, Bryce, she said quietly. The processing of the scene took hours. Sycamore Drive was cordoned off with yellow tape that read Federal Crime Scene, which confused the local residents who were used to seeing the blue and white tape of the Oak Creek PD. Kane had been placed in the back of one of the Suburbans, isolated, air conditioning off. He was sweating, stewing, and waiting. Outside, the dynamic was shifting from tactical to legal. Elias stood by the hood of his Tahoe, drinking a bottle of water Reed had given him. His shoulder throbbed, and he knew he would have a massive bruise tomorrow, but the adrenaline kept the pain distant. So, Reed said, leaning against the fender. The courier's gone, Elias said, shaking his head. Saw the lights, saw the cruiser. Probably turned around 3 blocks back. Pierce won't get the money today. He'll get spooked. He might start shredding documents. We can get a warrant for Pierce's place based on the wiretap we already have, Reed suggested. It's messy, but we might salvage it. Maybe, Elias said. He looked at the police cruiser still parked crookedly in the street. But right now I'm more interested in what we found in Kane's car. You mean besides your gun? I mean the laptop, Elias said. When he was running my plates, I saw something on his screen. It wasn't the standard NCIC database. Reed frowned. What was it? It looked like a private messaging board, something encrypted. He didn't close it when he jumped out. Reed flagged down a tech agent. Get the data off the cruiser's laptop. Clone it now. While the tech team went to work, a new vehicle arrived. It was a standard Oak Creek police chief's car. Chief Roy Fletcher was a man in his 60s trying desperately to hold on to a job that was rapidly becoming too complex for him. He walked under the yellow tape looking like he was walking to his own execution. He approached AS/AC Lang and Elias. "Agent Lang," Fletcher said, extending a hand that Lang ignored. "I got the call. I can't believe this." "Believe it, Chief," Lang said. "Your officer assaulted an agent." "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding," Fletcher tried, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. "Bryce Kane is a veteran. He's old school, maybe a bit rough, but he gets results." "Old school?" Elias spoke up. He stepped out from behind Lang. Chief Fletcher looked at Elias. He saw the dust on the suit, the red marks on the wrists. "This is Agent Crow," Lang introduced. "Chief," Elias said, "your old school officer profiled me, assaulted me, and illegally detained me, but here's the part that is going to interest you." Elias pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a printout the tech agent had just handed him. "We just pulled the logs from Kane's onboard computer. You know how you guys are supposed to run plates through the state database?" "Of course," Fletcher said. "Kane didn't run my plate through the state database," Elias said. "He ran it through a private Discord server." Fletcher blinked. "A what?" "A chat room," Elias explained. "A private group called the Blue Wall. He posted my plate number and a photo of me sitting in the car. He asked the group, 'Got a bogey at 4,000, 2 Sycamore, black guy in a nice car messing with the neighborhood, green light to harass.'" Fletcher's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And," Elias continued, his voice hardening, "someone replied, a user named Watchman. The reply was, 'Light him up, make him run.'" Elias stepped closer to the chief. "This wasn't just a bad stop, Chief. This was coordinated gang activity operating inside your department. Kane wasn't checking for warrants. He was checking with his friends if he could have some fun." The implications were nuclear. It meant Kane was not a lone wolf. It meant there was a cell of officers in Oak Creek, and maybe other departments, sharing targets, encouraging harassment, and bypassing legal protocols. "This is impossible," Fletcher whispered. "It's about to be national news," Lang said. "We are seizing all servers at your precinct. We are seizing all personal devices of officers on that shift, and we are opening a pattern or practice investigation into the Oak Creek Police Department immediately." Fletcher looked at Kane, who was watching from the window of the Suburban. The chief's face went from shock to fury. He realized his department was about to be gutted because one man could not suppress his ego for a few minutes. "Can I speak to him?" Fletcher asked. "No," Lang said. "He is a federal prisoner. You can speak to his lawyer if he can find one." At that moment, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up to the perimeter. A man in a sharp navy suit got out. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confident stride of a man who charged $800 an hour. "That," Elias said, checking his watch, "would be the lawyer." It was Quentin Hale, the Quentin Hale. He was a defense attorney known for taking high-profile cases involving police misconduct, usually defending the cops. He was the go-to fixer for the Fraternal Order of Police. Hale ducked under the tape, flashing a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Gentlemen, quite a party. I represent Officer Kane. I demand to see my client immediately." Lang blocked his path. "Mr. Hale, you're fast." "I have a retainer with the union," Hale said smoothly. "Now, I understand there was friction between agencies. Let's not blow this out of proportion. My client made a judgment call. We can discuss an apology, perhaps a drop charge." Elias laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Hale," Elias said, "your client is currently detained under Title 18 United States Code, Section 242 and Section 111 for assault on a federal officer, and we are currently drafting charges for conspiracy to violate civil rights based on digital evidence we just seized." Hale paused. He looked at Elias, then at the tech agents cloning the laptop. The smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Conspiracy?" Hale asked, his voice losing its lilt. "That's a reach, Agent." "Is it?" Elias held up the printout of the chat log. He solicited instructions on whether to harass a citizen based on race from a private network. That is conspiracy. And since I am a federal agent, that makes it a conspiracy to impede a federal investigation. Hale snatched the paper. He read it. His eyes narrowed. He was a shark, and he just realized there was blood in the water, but it was his client's blood. "I need 5 minutes with him," Hale said, his tone serious now. "You can have 2, Lang said, with an agent present. "Attorney-client privilege," Hale snapped. "Not when the device used to commit the crime is still in the car he's sitting in," Lang countered. "We are securing the scene. You can shout at him through the window." Hale walked over to the Suburban. Kane saw him and started pounding on the glass. "Get me out of here, Hale. They broke my wrist. They kidnapped me." Hale gestured for the agent to roll the window down 3 inches. "Bryce," Hale said, his voice low and hard. "Shut up." "What? You're supposed to help me." I can't help you if you keep talking, Hale hissed. They have the chat logs, Bryce. They have the blue wall chats. Kane stopped pounding. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. They looked at the laptop? Yes, Hale said. And because of that, this isn't a traffic stop anymore. It's a RICO case against you. Kane slumped back against the seat. But Watchman told me to... Hale closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Did you just identify a co-conspirator while a federal agent is standing 2 feet away holding a recorder? The agent standing guard smiled pleasantly. I'm done, Hale said, stepping back. I need to make some calls. I need to see if the union will even cover this. Intentional criminal conspiracy usually voids your coverage, Bryce. You can't leave me, Kane screamed as Hale walked away. Elias watched the lawyer retreat. He turned to Reed. You know what the worst part is? What? If he had just checked the badge, Elias said, I would have let him go with a warning. He would be home eating dinner in an hour. Now he's going to prison for years. Calamity, Reed said, spitting on the ground. We aren't done yet, Elias said, looking down the street at Councilman Pierce's house. The lights in the councilman's house had just turned off. The big fish is trying to run. Kane was just the appetizer. Elias tapped his earpiece. Tactical, this is Crow. We are pivoting. The primary target, Pierce, is likely destroying evidence. We have probable cause based on the exigent circumstances created by the compromised surveillance. We are moving on the house now. Copy that, the radio crackled. Elias looked at Kane one last time. Sit tight, officer. The show is just starting. The transition from a standoff on the street to a full-scale federal raid happened with the terrifying precision of a thunderclap. For Bryce Kane, sitting handcuffed in the back of the FBI Suburban, the world had turned into a surreal nightmare. He watched through the tinted glass as the tactical team reformed. They were not looking at him anymore. They were looking at the house at 408 Sycamore Drive, the home of Councilman Randall Pierce. Kane had waved at Pierce just yesterday. He had told the neighborhood watch meetings that Pierce was a pillar of the community. He had spent years patrolling the street, effectively acting as Pierce's unpaid private security guard, chasing off suspicious cars to keep the councilman happy. Now he watched as Special Agent Elias Crow, the man Kane had tried to humiliate, donned a heavy ballistic vest with FBI in bold yellow letters. Crow moved with a fluidity that Kane, with his stiff back and bad knees, had never possessed. Breaching tools up, Elias commanded, his voice clear over the radio frequency that Kane could faintly hear from the front seat of the Suburban. Pierce is spooked. If he destroys the ledger, we lose the cartel connection. We go hard, we go fast. The team moved up the driveway. Kane felt a sick feeling in his stomach. Cartel connection? Pierce was just a zoning guy. He approved strip malls. What was the FBI talking about? Stack up, Elias ordered. 6 agents lined up against the pristine white siding of Pierce's colonial mansion. Reed was on the ram. FBI search warrant, Elias bellowed. His voice was a weapon, projecting deep and loud, shaking the windows. Open the door! Silence.
Hit it!
Crack! The sound of the battering ram splintering the solid oak door was sickeningly loud. It took one swing. The door flew inward.
Go, go, go.
Kane watched the agents flood into the house. He saw the flash of tactical lights sweeping the foyer. He heard shouting, muffled by the walls but unmistakable in its intensity. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Elias moved through the hallway, his weapon raised. Federal agents, show me your hands. A maid screamed and dropped to the floor in the kitchen. Secure her, keep moving. Elias signaled to the rear of the house toward the study. That was where the shredder would be. They reached the double doors of the study. They were locked. Quentin, take it. Reed did not use the ram this time. He used a mule kick, snapping the latch. The doors swung open. Councilman Pierce was standing by the fireplace. He was not shredding documents. He was burning them. A metal wastebasket was in flames, smoke curling up toward the high ceiling. Pierce, a man usually seen in tailored suits, was in his bathrobe, frantically feeding thick ledgers into the fire. FBI, step away from the fire, Elias shouted. Pierce looked up, his eyes wild. You can't come in here. I have immunity. I'm an elected official. You're under arrest for money laundering and racketeering. Elias rushed forward. Pierce tried to throw a black hard drive into the flames. Elias lunged. He did not tackle the man. He tackled the evidence. Elias's gloved hand snatched the hard drive out of the air, inches from the fire. He felt the heat sear his wrist, but he held on. Reed hit Pierce with a tackle that would have made an NFL highlight reel. The councilman hit the expensive Persian rug with a thud. The wind knocked out of him. Hands behind your back. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting, Pierce wheezed, his face pressed into the wool. You tried to destroy evidence in front of federal agents, Reed growled, cuffing him. That's obstruction. Add 5 years to the sentence. Elias stood up, clutching the hard drive. He looked at the burning bin. He grabbed a heavy vase of flowers from the desk and dumped the water into the bin. The fire hissed and died, leaving half-burnt papers soggy but legible. Secure the scene, Elias breathed, his heart hammering. Get the fire department to check the chimney for updrafts of loose paper. I want every scrap of ash bagged. 10 minutes later, the front door opened again. Bryce Kane, still watching from the car, saw the impossible. Councilman Randall Pierce, the man who controlled the police budget, the man Kane had idolized as the definition of success, was dragged out in handcuffs. He was weeping. He looked small, pathetic, and guilty. Pierce saw the police cruiser in the street. He saw Kane in the back of the FBI truck. "Kane!" Pierce screamed, his voice cracking. "You idiot! You brought them here! You let them write to me!" Kane flinched, as if slapped. Elias walked out behind the prisoner, holding the evidence bag containing the hard drive. He walked over to the Suburban where Kane was being held. He signaled the agent to open the door. The rush of cool air hit Kane's sweaty face. "You see that, Bryce?" Elias asked, pointing at the weeping councilman. Kane nodded dumbly. "That man has been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel for years," Elias said. "He's been poisoning the city with fentanyl money, washing it through construction projects. We spent years building this case. We were waiting for the money drop to catch him red-handed." Elias leaned in, his eyes cold. "But because you wanted to play tough guy with a black man in a nice car, the courier got spooked. We missed the money. We almost lost the hard drive. You didn't protect this neighborhood, Bryce. You protected a monster, and you almost let him get away." Kane looked down at his hands bound in plastic. The narrative in his head, that he was the thin blue line, the protector, was shattering. He was not the hero. He was the clown who tripped the alarm. "I didn't know," Kane whispered. "That," Elias said, slamming the door, "is going to be on your tombstone." The interrogation room at the FBI Chicago field office was a study in sensory deprivation. The walls were gray soundproofing foam. The table was bolted to the floor. The air was frigid, kept intentionally cold to keep suspects uncomfortable and awake. Bryce Kane had been sitting there for hours. His handcuffs had been replaced with steel ones chained to the ring on the table. He was thirsty. He needed to use the bathroom, but mostly he was terrified. The door opened. He expected his lawyer, Quentin Hale. Instead, Agent Elias Crow walked in, followed by ASAC Victor Lang. "No lawyer. Where is Hale?" Kane demanded, his voice raspy. "I invoked my right to counsel." Elias sat down, placing a thick file on the metal table. "Mr. Hale is currently busy." "Busy doing what? He's my lawyer." "Actually," Lang said, remaining standing, "Mr. Hale represents the Fraternal Order of Police. He represents the union, and as of 20 minutes ago, the union has voted to revoke your membership and legal protection." Kane felt the blood drain from his face. "What? They can't do that?" "They can," Elias said. "There is a clause in your contract regarding conduct unbecoming and criminal malfeasance. When the news broke that you were running a racial profiling ring on a private server, well, the union decided you were too radioactive to touch. They cut you loose, Bryce. You're on your own." Kane slumped. The system he had served, the blue wall he thought would always shield him, had just dropped him off a cliff to save itself. "I want a public defender," Kane whispered. "You'll get one," Elias said. "But first we're going to listen to a story. Your story." Elias opened the file. He pulled out photos, not of Kane, but of the chat logs from the laptop. "We cracked the encryption on the Blue Wall Discord server," Elias said. "It's ugly, Bryce, really ugly. Jokes about beating suspects, competitions on who can write the most bogus tickets. But the worst part is the hierarchy." Elias tapped a photo of a user profile named Watchman. "This guy," Elias said, "Watchman, he's the ringleader. He tells you who to target. He gave you the order to light me up today." "Who is he?" Kane shook his head. I can't tell you." "Why not?" Lang asked. "Loyalty to the people who just fired your lawyer? To the people who are letting you take the fall for a federal civil rights violation?" "You don't understand," Kane said, his eyes tearing up. "If I talk, I'm a rat. I'm dead in prison. A cop in general population is bad. A snitch cop, I won't last a week." Elias leaned forward. His voice was not angry anymore. It was dangerously soft. "Bryce, look at the math. You are facing years for the deprivation of rights, another stretch for the gun enhancement, another for conspiracy. You are looking at decades. You will die in prison anyway." Elias slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is a proffer agreement," Elias said. "You talk. You tell us who Watchman is. You tell us every officer involved in this ring. In exchange, we recommend a significantly reduced sentence in a minimum security federal camp. We put you in protective custody. You survive." Kane stared at the paper. It was a lifeline, but it required him to betray the only identity he had left. "I need to know I'm safe," Kane stammered. "You're only safe if you give us the head of the snake," Elias said. "Who is Watchman?" Kane closed his eyes. He thought about the barbecue at the precinct last summer. He thought about the man who had clapped him on the back and told him to keep the streets clean. The man who had given him the login to the server. "It's," Kane's voice cracked. "It's Sergeant Baxter." Elias paused. "The chief's brother, the shift sergeant?" "Yes," Kane wept, "and the chief knows. Chief Fletcher is overlord in the chat. They run it together. They use the tickets and the arrests to juice the stats to get federal grants. It's all a game." The silence in the room was heavy. This was bigger than a few bad apples. The entire orchard was rotten. "Lang," Elias said, not taking his eyes off Kane. "Get the warrant for the chief." Elias looked back at Kane. "You did the right thing, Bryce. Finally. Does this mean I can go home? Kane asked, a pathetic hope in his eyes. Elias stood up and gathered the files. He looked at the man who had tried to ruin him. He felt a moment of pity, but it was fleeting. No, Bryce, Elias said. It means you don't die in prison, but you're never going home. Not to the life you had. Elias knocked on the door. Guard, take him to booking. In the time after the verdict, the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago was besieged by media vans. The headline on the scrolling ticker of the CNN van read, Oak Creek Police Scandal Sentencing Day. Special Agent Elias Crow stood on the steps, adjusting his tie. The wind off the lake was cold, but the sun was bright. Beside him stood Agent Theo Reed and ASAC Victor Lang. Inside the courtroom, the final act of the drama had just played out. Bryce Kane stood before the judge. He looked 20 years older. His mustache was gone, shaved off in county lockup. His suit was ill-fitting. He had lost significant weight from stress. The courtroom was packed. In the front row sat his ex-wife. She was not there to support him. She was there with her divorce attorney to ensure the lien on his pension was finalized. She would not look at him. Judge Nora Bennett, a stern woman with zero tolerance for corruption, adjusted her glasses. Mr. Kane, she said, you have cooperated with the government. Your testimony was instrumental in the indictment of former Chief Fletcher and Sergeant Baxter, both of whom are now facing significant prison time. The court acknowledges this. Kane nodded, hope rising in his chest. Maybe probation, maybe house arrest. However, the judge continued, her voice hardening like concrete, you were the spearhead of a culture of terror. You used your badge as a cudgel. You targeted Agent Crow not because of what he did, but because of who he was. You betrayed the public trust in the most visceral way possible. The judge looked at Elias sitting in the prosecution box. Agent Crow, do you have a victim impact statement? Elias stood up. He walked to the podium. He did not have notes. Your Honor, Elias said, I am a trained federal agent. When Mr. Kane assaulted me, I knew how to de-escalate. I knew the law. I had a team listening. Elias paused, looking directly at Kane. But I keep thinking about the man who sat in that car before me, the teenager driving home from school, the father going to the grocery store. They didn't have a wire. They didn't have a backup team. When they met Officer Kane, they had no voice. Today, the system worked because I am part of the system. But justice shouldn't require a badge to work. Officer Kane didn't just break the law, he broke the promise that keeps this society from falling into chaos. He needs to serve as an example that the badge is a heavy weight, not a free pass. Elias sat down. The judge nodded. With Bryce Kane, I sentence you to a significant term in federal prison followed by several years of supervised release. You are stripped of your pension. You are permanently barred from holding any position in law enforcement or security. Remand is immediate. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. No, Kane cried out as the marshals moved in. Please, I helped you. The marshals did not care. They spun him around, cuffing his hands behind his back, the same sound, click, click, that he had inflicted on Elias. As they walked him out the side door, Kane looked back. He locked eyes with Elias one last time. There was no anger in Elias's eyes, just a blank, professional indifference. Kane realized with a crushing finality that he was not a villain in Elias's story anymore. He was just paperwork. Outside the courthouse, Elias walked down the steps. The reporters swarmed. Agent Crow, how do you feel about the verdict? Is the FBI investigating other departments? Elias stopped at the microphones. He looked into the cameras. Justice was served today, Elias said, but let's be clear, this wasn't a victory. A police department was dismantled. A city councilman is in jail. A family was destroyed. This was a tragedy that could have been avoided with a few seconds of respect. That's the lesson. Respect the law, respect the people, or eventually the law will come for you. He stepped back. Reed clapped him on the shoulder. Beer? Yes, Elias smiled. But you're buying. I'm technically still on duty until I file this final report. Deal. They walked away, two men in suits disappearing into the city crowd. Behind them, the news screens flashed the mugshot of Bryce Kane, a man who had everything and lost it all in those moments of arrogance because he could not let go of his ego. The karma had not just hit, it had cleared the board. And that is how those moments of arrogance destroyed a lifetime of service. Bryce Kane thought he was the predator, but he failed to realize he was swimming in an ocean with much bigger sharks. He lost his job, his freedom, and his legacy, all because he judged a book by its cover and did not bother to read the badge inside. It is a brutal reminder. In the age of cameras and accountability, the truth always has a way of coming out. Kane's blue wall of silence did not protect him. It collapsed on top of him. What do you think? Did Kane deserve the sentence, or should it have been harsher considering he was part of a larger conspiracy? And would you have remained as calm as Agent Crow? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We post real life inspired dramas every week. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.